Oh, it's not. It's
The
not
mic's
on.
not working.
Welcome back.
Thank you. John wanted me to.
Yes, sir. Orders permit. Welcome, everyone. Good to see everyone here today. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Enjoying the beautiful weather, a little bit warm, but yay, sunshine. Opportunity to maybe get outside early in the morning, later in the afternoon, correct? Or evening. But hey, it's good day, and we're gonna lead off with prayer, and I'm gonna ask Bill Moore if he'll lead us off with a blessing.
Let me do a flag announcement before we pray. I think I told you this last week. We've got 1,526 paid flags, 677 pending for $68,164 that we've earned. Last week, I was going to have just a few people help me disassemble flags, but I had such a great response. And people that got there early when I did, that we disassembled the flags and reassembled all of those that we disassembled. Now there's 13 more down there that I found this week, but I'll take care of those Saturday. So really, I think we're done with flags until after the Labor Day holiday. Labor Day and now I do have a request. You know, the naysayers in the Gospel of Luke called Jesus a glutton and a wine bibber. So I need all the wine bibbers, Presbyterians, Methodists, Presbyterians, Catholics, Presbyterians, the occasional Baptist, and other Presbyterians and nuns to save your wine corks, because we're about out of wine corks. Okay, John was just busy smacking those things in, and we just need to get some wine corks to put them in. And but we had a great day Saturday. It was a very, very productive day. So, and I haven't heard any recent news about Rick Lindsay, other than I think he's still in the hospital and recovering. Okay, he is pretty serious heart surgery, heart transplant, so far as I know. Okay, so join me in the spirit of prayer. Eternal God, we give you thanks for this beautiful day. We give you thanks for the club. We ask your spirit to be upon us, upon our work in this community, upon this food, upon our meeting today. Take this food to the nourishment of our bodies and keep us this day in your peace. In the name of the Christ. Amen.
Next, we will have Dr. Carr lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Please face the flag, place your hand on your heart, and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America. God bless America. Ready, sing. God bless America. Land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the life with the light from love. Let me hear you. From the mountain, louder, to the prayer, louder, to the ocean, wide with gold. God bless America, my home sweet. Can you hear you? Let me hear you. Come on now. God bless our days. Slow down. My home sweet. Have a seat. Good job. Well done.
And Tracy is going to introduce the guests. Tracy. Yes. What shall I do? Keep the mic?
Yes.
Talk about it. Go ahead, Tracy. Of course, we have our guest speaker here, Dr. Snyder, and with him is we have Wayne Hector here.
Wait.
BJ is back with us.
Yeah, BJ.
That's with Martha Sugar. Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Next, we're going to highlight a guest member, and today it will be Lazaro. And come forward, please, sir. He is our president nominee. Woo! Woo-hoo!
It's good to be here. Thank you for allowing, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good, okay. Thank you for, again, allowing me to continue to talk about my journey with the Rotary. Most of you guys know a little bit about me and what I do. So for those visiting guests, and my name is Lázaro Alvarez. I am the race director and co-founder of the Irving Marathon Running Series. And here at Irving at the Music Factory. We now have 9 running events from St. Patrick's Run to, as of yesterday, we have a new 5K that you can run with your dogs at the new Las Colinas park that they opened. So very excited about what we're doing, but thinking back to my journey, originally I'm from El Salvador. I grew up with my grandparents. My mom came to the United States in 1987, fleeing the Civil War that was going on when she was about 21 years old. So in El Salvador, my little sister and I remained, and again, we were raised by my grandparents. But some of the things that I learned from my grandpa was that he was very involved in the community. Even though he was not our parent, he was still part of the PTA at the school that I attended. He was very involved in the church and also with the community. So when I moved to the United States, I came here. Again, it was my mom and I, my sister living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my uncle, his wife, and his son as well. So it was a little bit different change to come to being part of a great community as I was over there and then moving over here. So in high school, I knew that there was a lot of different things that we did back home that my grandpa taught me as far as leadership and being involved and doing great things for the community. So I got involved in a lot of different organizations. I was part of the ROTC in high school. I was part of the team court with the municipal court. I was a track and cross-country runner. Got upgraded to all AP classes by my senior year. So I was very, very involved. And then one of my teachers, after applying for different scholarships that I did not receive, mentioned that I should apply for the Rotary Scholarship. And I did. And lo and behold, I received the Rotary Scholarship, which allowed me to then again believe that I could go to college after getting no's from the other scholarships. So it was a blessing that allowed me to, again, apply for the scholarship. It led me to get other scholarships after that, right? Because now I believe that I can get some scholarships. So going to college, I went to Trine University with a double major in political science, international business, and I did a little bit of psychology as well. But meanwhile, I was reading a ton, which was some of the things that I learned to do in high school because I did not have any great role models around me. But that all changed when I went to Kerrville. Kerrville is by San Antonio, for those that don't know where it is. And Kerrville is kind of like a mecca for retirees as well. So I was very involved with the Rotary Club there, where I was able to meet and learn from a lot of great mentors that had very successful careers in the business world and were now retired. So some of them were my professors. There wasn't a Rotary Club my sophomore year, so we started one, and ever since then, when I was in college again, I was very involved with the Rotary, and then working with the community and engaging the students into the community as well. So it was a good experience that allowed me to, once I graduated college, to learn, what it is like to work with the community and whatnot. So moving to Irving back in 2009, I used to do a lot of running events. a lot of running. So I used to run through Canyon Trail for 2-3 hours. Nobody was there. And then so I decided that I wanted to give back to the community, traits and things that I've learned through Rotary, through my grandpa, growing up. So we started the Irving Marathon in 2012, 13 with the help of my best friend, and then just the community, right? So ever since, Rotary has taught me and those people that I've been around, what it is to give back. It helped me personally feel a void that I had growing up with my grandparents, right? We're very involved in our community, but coming here as a stranger, they don't know anybody, but Rotary is kind of like a second family that allows me to do what I was doing had I not moved from the country that I come from. So I'm very grateful, for the Rotary organization. As a business owner now, we follow the Rotary 4-way test for business motto, and that is how we operate. So all of our staff, if you ask how do what is the number one thing that we do? Well, first is the truth. So then it's gotten us to where we are right now, where we are doing a lot of great things for the community with the marathon, and we are looking forward to seeing where we go from this. But going forward, one of the things that as a goal of mine is see what all I can achieve and what we can do together as a community, so that way it stands there as an example that a lot of times if you work with the community and you do great things and you do more, you're able to achieve a lot more. So I'm grateful again for the journey that I have with Rotary, and looking forward to moving forward and seeing how we can enhance the living, standard of living that we have in the community, not just here, but also throughout the world. So thank you again. I'm always around. If you guys have any questions after, I'm more than happy to entertain those. So thank you again.
Thank you. Good, that. It's going to be nice to get to know each member a little deeper than maybe just handshake and hello. So thank you so much. Okay, let's see. The next on the program would be, I think some people had announcements that they would like to mention. John, I think you wanted to announce and speak about the district roundtable on Saturday. You said it again. And
I thought I did that last week, but the first district roundtable of this Rotary year is Saturday. It starts at 9:30. Carter Boulevard Baptist Church, very close to the intersection of Carter and 635. There will be snacks, and I know that because this club is the host club for this particular roundtable, and Linda's already got the donuts in the trunk. Lazaro is bringing some voter actors to eat the donuts. It's going to be a great roundtable. It's a terrific facility. Don't know what else you'd like to know, but never been in a roundtable. This would be a good opportunity to go right here in Irving, where it maybe never has been for a long time. So hopefully I'll see you Saturday. And on top of that, I'm not sure what other else you have on your announcement calendar up there, but our own assistant governor, Lori Kreider, has been kind enough to invite everybody to a party after a roundtable at where were it? At the Cork and Big down at the Business Center.
Awesome.
And
Thank
the first
you.
drinks are on board.
Uh-oh.
And that concludes my announcement.
Thank you, John. Lori, do you have anything you would like to address?
Well, I'd like to say after the roundtable, also coming up, August 5th is the district award celebration. So I hope everybody can come out to that. That'll be fun as well. The visual details. August 5th.
Thank you so much. Also, we'd like to shout out that Jasmine is now a member of our club at the Center Cafe. Anyone else have an announcement or Bob?
Yes, we want to thank Wayne Fletcher and his son Corey, who couldn't be with us today, but they have been a part of the flag program for 10 years.
Excellent. Let's give him an applause. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to have Laura Manning come up and introduce our guest speaker, and I'm sure we will be delighted with a lot of good information for healthy living. Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Hello, everyone. Today we have the privilege of having Dr. Branden Snyder. He's a cardiologist at Cottonwood Cardiology. Grew up near my current stomping grounds down in Stephenville, and did a lot of his training out in Arizona and also up in Boston. Moved back about 5 years ago and has been at Cottonwood since then. So he's going to talk to you today about heart health. And Fatina's here also. She's going to be handing out some things. So let's welcome both of them.
Thank you all for having me. Is the
Get closer, Mike.
get closer? Okay, very good. I'm just gonna set myself a timer so I don't bore you guys. So I'm Dr. Snyder, as she mentioned. I'm an interventional cardiologist, which means I put in stents. I don't do surgery. I don't do surgery per se. Is this better? Can you hear me better?
You might want, you can release it.
Okay, let's try this again. You can raise your hand to throw something at me if you can't hear me. So like I said, I'm Dr. Snyder. I work at Cottonwood Cardiology, also work out of Baylor, Irving, and the Heart Hospital in Plano. Do we have some slides? She's giving the handouts with the slides as well, so we can go through with it as we go through. So I had a pretty broad subject here as far as heart health and what that means. I kind of approach it how I would approach my patients coming to see me who's wanting to build risk factors. So a lot of slides, and I'm sorry for quite the number, but maybe you can be able to go through them in leisure. So we're going to go through risk factors, prevention, etc. As I mentioned, working with hospitals and Cottonwood. So to start with, as all of us know, cardiovascular disease is a major threat in America. It is the leading cause of death in America. One person dies every 36 seconds, according to some data, and this is actually really old data, so this is probably increased since this was brought out. And this is all per the CDC at this slide. So 1 in 4 deaths can be attributed to heart disease. And it does cost the U.S. quite a bit of cash money, and that's at least again from data. So this slide is just talking about the different causes of death. We all hear about cancer being the leading cause. Obviously, heart disease and cancer are both very serious issues, and strokes are on there as well. But a lot of these can be, this mentions diet related. In other words, some of the things that lead to cardiovascular disease could be controllable, and I'll go through that on the next slide. So cardiovascular risk factors, am I at risk? So the things that we sometimes can't control, or can control, are hypertension, so high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, and in a lot of cases diabetes, and then obviously smoking. So those things, and I say controllable in that you can change habits, do lifestyle modifications, and that can help limit your exposure to these things or sometimes prevent them from occurring. The uncontrollable factors that we consider risk factors are things like their gender. I thought it was always uncontrollable, but that changes sometimes. Family history and age as well. Okay, some of those things obviously we have no control over. So unhealthy habits, just a couple more, I guess, examples of things that you can control. Eating a healthy diet. So if you're eating high saturated fats, things like trans fats, red meats, processed meats, those types of things. Not getting enough physical activity. We're all, I think, guilty of that with busy life. And then tobacco use obviously increases heart attack risk. So what is the thing that develops, or makes us develop heart disease? When we refer to heart disease, we're talking mostly about atherosclerotic disease. And what that is plaque buildup. So if you think about the pipes on your sinks at home, if they're 20 and 30 years old, some buildup starts to develop. Same type of a thing happens with arteries of our heart. So the top picture is a clean lumen, a clean pipe that someone is 20 years old, 15 years old, and blood flow is brisk and no problem, no blockages. Over time, cholesterol, a little bit of smoking, a couple of steaks, cheeseburgers, leads to some plaque buildup in the arteries of the heart, and as you would expect, that limits the blood flow. It's kind of like damming up part of a river. It doesn't usually cause any problems early on, but over time it can lead to things like symptoms. The problem also then occurs, and the thing I get concerned about and I get called about, is heart attack. And that occurs a lot of times when that plaque is unstable. It's inflamed, it flakes off, kind of like a scab will flake off on a cut. And when that flakes off, a blood clot forms, blocking the blood flow to that part of the heart, you have a heart attack. Similar type of a situation happens when someone has a stroke, or can happen. And so our goal is to help decrease that inflammation. So here's just another picture of a normal looking artery, an artery that has developed some plaque buildup. And then on the picture on the right, you can see that some of that plaque, it's kind of sideways here, but either way, some of that plaque is ruptured, it's unstable, and blood clot forms when that plaque ruptures. That's what leads to a heart attack. So our goals in helping prevent heart attack are to lower inflammation. So how does the atherosclerosis develop? And how does that atherosclerosis then lead to rupture or heart attack? Those things are, some of them we know, like smoking, diabetes, other things that can probably increase inflammation in the body are things like rheumatoid arthritis, for instance. Not regular arthritis, but rheumatoid arthritis, kind of an autoimmune issue. And then obviously stress in life leads to some forms of inflammation as well. So what can I do to lower my inflammation levels? Exercise, 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 exercise. So it's reassuring to hear the marathon plugs there as well. One of my mentors used to always tell patients, only exercise on days that you eat. But the AHA knew that was a little unfeasible, so they said 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, and try to get your heart rate up more than 120. Now that's sometimes age dependent, but either way, if you're exercising 30 minutes a day, on average 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week, you're doing your part. So the other parts that we can do to lower inflammation, eating a healthy diet. And when I say healthy diet, again, I say to my patients all the time, give me an example. So the Mediterranean diet, one that you may have heard of, that's one that I highly recommend. It's a low inflammatory state. We'll go through some of the aspects of that. So limited processed foods, reduced red meat. And then down at the bottom is the thing then when you come and see me that we're trying to address as well. And that's sometimes medications. So we've all heard of aspirin, we've all heard of statins, I presume. The statin medications, as we all know, you may have heard, lower cholesterol. So it makes your cholesterol better. But the other thing that likely has a probably more notable effect that statins have is it lowers inflammation. So being on a statin, you may get to a normal cholesterol number, but really where it's also giving your benefit is it's lowering the inflammatory state in that plaque, keeping it stable and stuck up against the wall. Does that all make sense? Does anybody have any questions so far? The other thing is aspirin. Sorry, I moved backwards there. The other thing is aspirin, and we'll go through the appropriateness of that, but it has the same effect as a mild blood thinner, and it can help if a plaque were to rupture, it helps keep your blood from sticking to that area. So, next. So Mediterranean diet, as the name implies, lots of olive oils, not olive oil, nuts, fruits, fresh fruits, vegetables, lean meats, oily fish like salmon, seafood, low consumption of dairy products, and my favorite, moderate intake of wine with meals. And that's moderate or mild. I should have left mild on there. And obviously limiting sodas and sugary drinks and those types of things. Okay. So here's, we all like to use this food triangle things. This is just one example of more geared toward the Mediterranean diet. it's more talking about how often to have these things. So every day, the everyday column there is fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and those types of things. If you move up, there's seafood, oily fish, those types of things. So just an example of page 12. Okay, so should I start aspirin? We get this question a lot more recently in the past 2 or 3 years. A lot of studies have come out, at least in our community, saying that not everybody needs to be on aspirin, which is all we've always kind of known because, you know, a 40-year-old, 35-year-old coming into the office with no medical history of heart disease doesn't necessarily need to be on aspirin because aspirin can cause stomach issues. It is a mild blood thinner, so that it's not zero risk. But this, I give a couple of examples here, and again, luckily we have the handout, so you can kind of go through this and look. But in people, men, 45 to 80 years old, where the benefit outweighs the risk, it's probably reasonable to do that if you have some risk factors. But as you can see on the bottom, and I put that on the upcoming slides as well, talk to your doctor. So this is not a, you should start taking an aspirin. This is talk to your doctor about your risk factors and what is appropriate for you. The second line there, the second little dot, is regarding folks who have had a calcium source CT scan. We'll go through what that is in a minute, but in somebody who's had that and does have a positive calcium score or a certain score, that means they have coronary artery disease. They have the beginnings of the plaque buildup that we're talking about. And it's probably reasonable in certain individuals with a positive calcium score to go on and have an aspirin. Go ahead. Next question I get, should I be on a statin? Lots of reports of statins, and there are some intolerances, aches and cramps and things like that. But overall, with the multiple tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people on them, they're very safe medications overall. But again, talk with your doctor. If it's appropriate for you, it's probably reasonable to consider if you fall into some of these categories. So one of those, sorry about that. One of those indications is obviously if you had an event like a heart attack or a stroke, statin is almost guaranteed. You need to be on that medication. And aspirin is reasonable as well in that instance because they've been shown to greatly reduce the risk of the recurrence of heart attack or stroke. Okay? Other individuals that are kind of outlined there, but basically what it comes down to is if you have a couple of risk factors and maybe your cholesterol is a little bit above 100, the bad cholesterol that is, then it's probably reasonable to consider it after discussing with your doctor. And the ones that I like to use and that have been shown to have the best information or best risk profile are the high potency statins, and you've probably heard of Lipitor or Crestor. Another name for those is atorvastatin or rosuvastatin. So those are ones to consider when you have some of these risk factors because they do decrease that inflammatory process. Go ahead. So testing. Should I have a calcium source CT scan? I'll go through what that is. It kind of depends. Should I have a stress test? We all want to go to the cardiologist or the doctor and time my yearly stress test, or I'm 50 years old now, I need to get my stress test. And it kind of depends. It's not a bad thing necessarily to get the stress test, but it really gives the most information. I was just speaking with a patient earlier today about this. It really gives us the most information if you're having symptoms, shortness of breath, chest pain with activity, those types of things. So what is a calcium score? So I don't know if anybody here has maybe had a calcium score CT scan, but if you've ever had a CT scan, that's usually a modality where we look at the lungs, the liver, the gallbladder, some organ. This is a special kind of CT scan. Nothing is different about the machine. We're just focusing on the heart. We're looking at what the heart arteries look like. It doesn't require any contrast, and we're able to evaluate the 3 main arteries in the heart that feed the heart blood. It's meant to detect that plaque buildup that I was mentioning in those first couple of slides. Thanks. This slide actually just shows a picture of what I see when I look at a calcium source CT scan. That really bright spot that the arrow is pointing at, I know it's a small picture, but that bright spot is a coronary artery. That should not be bright white because the bright white suggests that that is calcium. If you can see the other bright white spots on that image, those are your bones. So your arteries should not look like your bones. That means that there's calcium in it, and that suggests plaque. Okay. So it gives an extent. And that's why we call it a score. You have 0, which is a good score, kind of like golf. Lowest score is better. And that means you have no significant plaque, but I've seen scores up into the 4,000. Okay. Next. Scroll. Since everybody has it, I'll just talk about it. If everybody has it, I'll just go ahead and go through it while we're looking here. So how do I interpret my numbers? So if you have one, you got a number, talk with your doctor about what it means, but that's basically the next part. So it is a score, as I mentioned before, and the degree of the height of the number suggests the degree of blockages that you have, or I should say the plaque that they have. It is not meant to suggest a blockage, however. Okay, so if someone has a calcium score of 450 and it's in different arteries of the heart, that's not really an interpretation or a way to evaluate a blocked artery. That's where we get into the stress test. Okay. No, I just can get back. So if someone's calcium score is 0, that means they have a very low likelihood of having a cardiac event in their lifetime. Okay, that doesn't mean they can just throw away stuff and start eating cheeseburgers every meal, but it just means at that time they don't have any significant plaque buildup that would suggest a problem. Okay. However, if someone has a score that's more than 1, it means that they do have maybe some mild plaque, and it may be reasonable to proceed with cholesterol lowering medications. Obviously, we're always going to diet, exercise, and appropriate lifestyle modifications. Sometimes when we see somebody with a score greater than 400, for instance, they indicate a moderate to severe amount of plaque, and the stress test is usually considered at that time. But again, discussion with the doctor is probably reasonable. Okay, good. Okay, next slide. So that takes me on to stress testing. And I think I have quite a bit of time, so please stop me if you have any questions. I've kind of gone through this. So stress testing is meant to evaluate for blocked arteries. In other words, blood flow that's not getting to a certain part of the heart. We have different modalities and ways of doing that. Some of you may have had a stress test, a nuclear stress test. was in China. And the natives in some of those areas, Papua New Guinea in particular, some of their total cholesterols are in the range of 7, total cholesterol is 7. So their bad cholesterol is far less. They have plant-based diet, lean meats and those types of things. So, who knows what a normal cholesterol is per se, just depends on where you live. One example I do give to my patients as well, with some of the addition of the newer medications that are injectable for lowering cholesterol, European guideline committees and smarter people than me have determined that even lower cholesterol goals are probably even better at controlling cholesterol. So their bad cholesterol goal for someone who's had a heart attack is less than 40. Ours is still less than 7. I don't know that we're headed in that direction, and not that everybody's going to need to give themselves injections. But that just goes to tell you that we think that LDL being whatever level it is some kind of marker for inflammation and risk for recurrent or new heart attack or stroke. Is that, I'm sorry that doesn't answer your question necessarily, but I agree with him that probably less than 150 is super protective, and it depends on the situation, I guess.
Well, he also says a whole food plant-based diet will really drop it because the plant, if you're not eating cholesterol, then it's not sticking to the mass of the food that's
Correct.
run through the whole
Yeah.
food plant-based diet.
Yeah, no, and that's true. The Ornish diet, if you've heard of that, that became famous after, not to get into politics, Bill Clinton had his event in heart surgery, and he reportedly, really clamped down after that. And that just Dr. Ornish, who works, I think, out of New York, and has this very strict, almost, I think it's vegan actually, diet that's very low inflammatory, et cetera, that has been about the only diet that's been shown to make plaque regress significantly. Not even the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet protects from inflammation, but that's a very stringent diet, et cetera, very impractical to really recommend all the time. But that's one example of that.
Silly question. Is a stroke less serious than a heart attack?
Is a stroke less serious than a heart attack? Well, depending on what area of the brain the stroke affects. So a stroke is basically a brain attack, blocked artery that's feeding part of the heart or part of the brain, blood. I'm sorry, I'm focused on the heart. I'm not cardiologist. So in a way, it's very similar, and a lot of times has a similar reasoning for it. That plaque that flakes off and causes a clot to go to the brain. So, if you have part of the brain that's affected that controls your speech and you can't speak, you tell me. Sometimes heart attacks are not affecting the entire heart, and as long as we get to it in time and open up the artery, we can save heart tissue. So these days, compared to 20, 30 years ago, when we didn't have all the fancy stents and balloons that I use, people did worse with the heart attack. If you ask me which I would rather have, probably a heart attack, but I don't want to either. So. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I gave a lot of great information, and I'm thinking everyone else did too, to remind us of how to live a healthy life and healthy diet, and do all the right things. So thank you, Dr. Snyder. Our meeting next week will be here at the Las Colinas Country Club, and we typically, hopefully, have guest speaker booked Steve Allen from ICANN. So that should be very informative and help us to gain information on how we can get involved and get behind some activities that support quality lifestyle. There will not be a board meeting after today's meeting. Our next board meeting will be August 5th at 1 o'clock. And again, as John mentioned, Saturday we are sponsoring the district Rotary Roundtable. And Val has disappeared. She had an appointment, but she had kindly offered to bring something healthy and cooking from home. So so yay. I said, well, I'm thinking to do what John said, pick up some donuts, but we will have something more healthy, I think. And at this time, we're gonna have a four-way test with Richard Raymond. Thank you.
Is there all concern? Will build goodwill and better friendships. Will be beneficial to all.
Again, thank you for everyone coming out today. Meeting's adjourned.